The large room fell silent as the alien ship appeared on the main screen. It was massive, at least 20 times bigger than the largest human spacecraft ever built. Commander Jack Miller stood tall, despite feeling small. This was humanity's first official meeting with the Galactic Confederation, and he was determined to make a good impression. "Steady," he whispered to Lieutenant Susan Wright, who stood beside him on the bridge of the Earth flagship Guardian. "Remember your training," Susan nodded. 6 months of diplomatic preparation had led to this moment. Earth had only discovered faster-than-light travel 15 years ago. Now they were about to join the galactic community. "They're hailing us." "Commander," said the communications officer. "On screen," Jack ordered, straightening his uniform. The screen changed to show a tall, purple-skinned alien with 4 eyes and a mouth full of sharp teeth. Silver markings covered its face, suggesting, "High rank, I am Admiral Zorax of the Dravex Empire, representing the Galactic Confederation," the alien said in perfect English, thanks to their translation technology. "We have received your signals and have come to welcome humans to the greater galaxy," Jack stepped forward. "Admiral Zorax, I am Commander Jack Miller of the United Earth Space Force. On behalf of all humans, we are honored to meet you and hope for peaceful relations." The alien's upper eyes narrowed slightly. "Your Guardian vessel seems adequate for a species so new to space travel. We've scanned your fleet. Is this truly all you've brought to our meeting?" Jack felt his face grow warm. Earth had sent its 5 best ships, their pride and joy. Each had taken years to build. "Yes, Admiral. This is our diplomatic fleet. We have others protecting Earth, of course." Zorax made a strange sound that the translator identified as laughter. "Of course you do. Well, we will proceed with the welcome ceremony. Please prepare to board our vessel in 1 Earth hour. Bring no more than 10 representatives." The screen went dark. Susan let out a breath she'd been holding. "That wasn't very friendly." "No," Jack agreed. "But we need this alliance. The reports from our deep space probe show some dangerous species out there. We need friends." 1 hour later, Jack led a team of 8 humans onto the Dravex ship. They included Susan, 2 scientists, 3 diplomats, and Earth's best xenobiologist. The Dravex ship interior was enormous, with ceilings 30 feet high and corridors wide enough for 20 humans to walk side by side. They entered what seemed to be a great hall. At least 50 alien species stood in groups, all turning to look at the humans as they entered. Jack recognized none of them from Earth's databases. Admiral Zorax approached, now wearing ornate armor that made him look even larger. "The humans have arrived," he announced to the room. Several aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. "Thank you for having us," Jack said, trying to sound confident. A short, green alien with 6 arms approached. "These are the humans. They're so fragile-looking." The alien spoke through a small device attached to its neck. "Yes, Ambassador Kletch," Zorax said. "And wait until you see their ships. Their entire fleet could fit in our maintenance bay." More laughter rippled through the room. Jack felt his face getting hot again, but he maintained his diplomatic smile. "We may be new to space travel, but humans are quick learners," he said. "Indeed," said a tall, thin alien covered in blue feathers. "Many new species believe that, before they understand their place in the galactic order." Jack and Susan were led around the room, introduced to various aliens. Some were polite, others openly dismissive. Many commented on humanity's tiny armada and primitive technology. During the formal dinner that followed, Admiral Zorax stood to make an announcement. Massive screens around the room lit up, showing images of Earth's 5 ships next to the much larger Confederation vessels. "Friends, today we welcome the newest protected species to our Confederation," Zorax said. "The humans have shown remarkable progress for their limited resources and understanding." "Protected species?" Jack hadn't heard this term before. "As is our custom," Zorax continued, "we offer humans our protection and guidance. Their solar system will be marked as a developing region, off limits to exploitation. In return, humans will provide cultural and biological data and limited trade rights." One of Earth's diplomats leaned toward Jack. This isn't what we expected. They're treating us like children. Jack nodded slightly, keeping his face neutral. This wasn't the equal partnership Earth had hoped for. After dinner, Susan managed to speak privately with a friendly alien named Trex who resembled a humanoid lizard. "What exactly does protected status mean?" she asked quietly. Trex looked uncomfortable. "It means you're not considered ready for full Confederation membership. You'll be protected from hostile species, but you won't have voting rights or access to advanced technology. For how long? Usually a few hundred years until your species proves itself." Susan's eyes widened. "A few hundred years?" "The Dravex control most Confederation decisions," Trex explained. "They prefer keeping newer species dependent on them. My people have been protected for 3 centuries. When the Earth delegation returned to their ship, they held an emergency meeting. They're offering us safety in exchange for keeping us weak," Jack summarized. "We'd be second-class citizens in the galaxy." "Do we have a choice?" asked one of the diplomats. "Their ships could destroy our entire fleet in minutes." "We accept for now," Jack decided, "but we report everything to Earth. President Carter needs to know what we're dealing with." 2 days later, the Earth ships headed home, carrying the signed agreement that officially gave humans protected status. The Dravex had laughed at their small fleet one final time as they departed. Back on Earth, President Ellen Carter listened to Jack and Susan's report with a stern expression. "So they think we're weak and primitive," she said when they finished. "Yes, Madam President," Jack confirmed. "They called our fleet a tiny armada and found it amusing." Carter stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Washington Monument in the distance. "Throughout human history, being underestimated has often been an advantage." She turned back to them. "Commander Miller, Lieutenant Wright, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level." She pressed a button and a hologram appeared over her desk. It showed hundreds of tiny spacecraft, each no bigger than a small car. "Project Swarm," she said. "For the past decade, our best engineers have been developing miniaturized technology. While other nations focused on building bigger ships, we explored going smaller." Jack and Susan stared at the hologram in amazement. "These ships are fully functional with weapons, shields, and FTL drives," Carter explained. "But their size makes them nearly impossible to detect or target with standard weapons." "The Confederation doesn't know about these," Susan realized. "No," Carter smiled. "And we're going to keep it that way. Let them laugh at our tiny armada for now. While they're not looking, we'll build thousands more." "You want us to spy on them," Jack said. "For now, yes. We'll play the part of the humble, grateful protected species. Meanwhile, you two will help lead our real defense program." Jack and Susan exchanged determined looks. The aliens had laughed at humanity's ships, thinking size meant everything. They would learn differently soon enough. "When do we start?" Jack asked. President Carter's smile grew wider. "We already have." News traveled fast across the galaxy. Within days, the highest members of the Galactic Confederation gathered for an emergency meeting. The Grand Hall on the Confederation's central planet was filled with representatives from hundreds of species. All were talking about one thing: the humans and their tiny ships. "This is impossible," shouted a Dravex general, slamming his fist on the table. "No species builds warships that small. It goes against all military logic." Ambassador Trex, the lizard-like alien who had once warned Susan Wright about protected status, spoke up. "And yet Admiral Vorex's report is clear. His flagship was disabled by ships smaller than our shuttlecraft." The Confederation's High Council sat at the center of the room. 6 leaders from the most powerful species looked troubled by this news. "We must respond immediately," said the Dravex Council member. "The humans have clearly violated the terms of their protected status by developing unauthorized technology." The other council members nodded in agreement. All except for one, a wise old alien from a species called the Vrel. "Perhaps," the Vrel said slowly, "we should first try to understand this new technology before we condemn it." "Understand it?" the Dravex shouted. "We should destroy it." If other protected species learn from the humans, the entire balance of power could shift. While the Confederation argued, Earth prepared for what might come next. In the Nevada base, Chief Engineer Megan Daniels was showing Admiral Jack Miller and Colonel Susan Wright the newest ships. These are 30% smaller than our previous models, Megan explained, pointing to ships that were now no bigger than a small desk. And the swarm intelligence has been upgraded to handle groups of up to 200 ships acting as one. Jack examined one of the tiny ships with amazement. You've outdone yourself, Megan. Susan looked worried. The Confederation won't let this go. Our spies report they're already sending a battle group to investigate Earth's apparent violation of protected status. How many ships? Jack asked. 20 capital ships, including 3 Dravex destroyers. They'll reach our solar system in about 2 weeks. Megan smiled confidently. Then we'd better get ready to show them the rest of our tricks. On the main Confederation fleet, Supreme Commander Thorn of the Dravex was preparing his ships for battle. He didn't believe the reports about the tiny human ships. In his mind, Admiral Vorax had simply been careless and was now making excuses. Want all ships to modify their sensors, he ordered his captains during a briefing. If these human vessels are as small as reported, we need to be able to detect and target them. What if we can't hit them? Asked one captain nervously. Thorn glared at him. They are still physical objects. If we can't target them precisely, we'll simply fill space with enough firepower that they can't escape. As the Confederation fleet approached Earth's solar system, they were being watched. Hundreds of tiny human ships had been positioned at the edge of the system, hiding among asteroids and space debris. These scout ships sent back detailed information about the approaching fleet. In the White House Situation Room, President Carter studied the reports with her military advisors. They're coming in force, she said grimly. More ships than we anticipated. But not more than we can handle, Jack replied confidently. Colonel Wright's team is already in position. Susan and a small team of specialists had embarked on the most dangerous mission yet. Using the smallest of the new ships, they had managed to approach the Confederation fleet undetected. Now they were attaching themselves to the hull of the main command ship. We're in position, Susan reported through a secure channel. Beginning Phase 1. Susan's team carefully cut their way through an unused maintenance hatch on the massive Dravex command ship. Once inside, they released dozens of tiny drones, each no bigger than a bee. These drones carried specialized equipment designed to interfere with the ship's systems. Drones deployed. Susan whispered into her communicator. Moving to Phase 2. Back on Earth, President Carter gave the order everyone had been waiting for. Launch the full swarm. Across the solar system, hidden bases on Earth, the Moon, Mars, and several asteroids opened. Thousands of tiny ships emerged, forming into swarm groups. Captain Aaron Garcia led the main attack force. All swarms report ready, he announced from his command ship. Proceed with the attack, Jack ordered. The Confederation fleet, still at the edge of the solar system, detected unusual activity ahead of them. Supreme Commander, reported a sensor officer. I'm detecting multiple small objects moving toward us, Commander Thorne smiled. So the reports were true. They do use tiny ships. Target and destroy them. Sir, there are thousands of them. Thorne's smile faded as he looked at the display. What had first appeared as a small cluster of dots was rapidly growing. The human ships were approaching from all directions. Open fire, he ordered. All ships, maximum spread. The massive Confederation ships began firing their weapons. Huge energy beams cut through space, but the tiny human vessels easily maneuvered around them. The weapons were designed to hit large targets, not small, agile ones. Sir, we're not hitting them, a weapons officer reported frantically. They're too small and too fast. Thorne slammed his fist on his command chair. Impossible, nothing can be that maneuverable. On his main screen, he watched as swarms of tiny ships surrounded his vessels. They moved with incredible coordination, sometimes flowing together like liquid, other times splitting apart to avoid weapons fire. Then the real attack began. The human ships attached themselves to the hulls of the Confederation vessels. Some cut power lines, others disabled weapons. Many released tiny drones that entered the ships through small openings. Inside Thorne's command ship, Susan and her team had reached the main computer core. They attached small devices to key systems. Virus uploading, Susan reported. We'll have control of their navigation systems in 3 minutes. Meanwhile, Captain Aaron Garcia was demonstrating new tactics with the swarm ships. Some groups formed, tight formations that could generate combined shield effects, making them much harder to damage. Others used coordinated attacks to overload enemy shields at specific points. On the bridge of his flagship, Thorn was receiving reports of failures across his fleet. 6 ships have lost weapons control. 4 more report engine failures. Our shields are failing. Then the lights on his own bridge flickered and died, replaced by dim emergency lighting. His screens went blank, then came back online showing a human face. Admiral Jack Miller. Supreme Commander Thorn, Jack said calmly. Your fleet is now under our control. Your weapons are disabled. Your engines will only work on our command. We could destroy your ships if we wanted to, but that's not our way. Thorn stared in disbelief. How? How did you develop such technology? No protected species has ever... That's just it, Jack interrupted. We never accepted being merely protected. Humans have always fought for their independence. We played along with your rules while developing our own path. From a side door on the bridge, Susan and her team emerged, weapons drawn. The Dravex officers were too shocked to resist. You're inside my ship? Thorn gasped. Susan smiled. We've been here since before you arrived in our system. Your sensors never detected our approach. Jack continued from the screen. The Confederation has 2 choices now. You can recognize Earth as a full and equal member, or you can face the consequences of underestimating us again. Thorn looked around at his disabled bridge, at the humans who had infiltrated his ship, and at the screens showing thousands of tiny vessels surrounding his fleet. The mighty Confederation ships, once considered the most powerful in the galaxy, were now helpless. You will regret this, Thorn growled. The Confederation will never accept being threatened by a lesser species. We're not threatening anyone, Jack replied calmly. We're simply demonstrating that size isn't everything. Your massive ships might be impressive, but they have weaknesses that our tiny armada can exploit. All we want is equality and respect. Thorn had no choice but to agree to the humans' terms. His fleet was completely at their mercy. As he gave the order to stand down, he finally understood what had happened. The Confederation had laughed at Earth's small ships, thinking they were primitive and weak. They had dismissed humans as a species not worth taking seriously. And in doing so, they had made the biggest mistake in Confederation history. They had underestimated human ingenuity. 1 year had passed since the Confederation fleet's defeat. The Grand Hall of the new Galactic Confederation headquarters buzzed with activity as representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered for a historic occasion. Today, the Reformed Council would be officially established with a new structure that gave equal voice to all member species, regardless of their size or military power. Admiral Jack Miller, now Earth's head representative to the Confederation, stood at a large window overlooking the ceremony preparations. Beside him was his old friend Colonel Susan Wright. Did you ever imagine we'd end up here? Susan asked, watching alien dignitaries from across the galaxy filing into the massive chamber. Jack shook his head. When we first met the Dravex, I was just hoping we'd avoid becoming their servants. This is beyond anything I dreamed possible. The past year had brought enormous changes. After the second defeat of the Confederation fleet, the balance of power had shifted dramatically. The Dravex, once the dominant force in galactic politics, had been forced to accept a reduced role. Many formerly protected species had gained full membership status and voting rights. Admiral Miller, Colonel Wright, a familiar voice called. They turned to see Ambassador Trex approaching, his lizard-like features set in what humans had learned was a smile. The final session begins in 20 minutes. Thank you, Ambassador, Jack replied warmly. Trex's people, the Cellans, had been among the first to ally with humans after seeing Earth stand up to the Dravex. I still can't believe how quickly things have changed, Trex said, joining them at the window. My people were protected for over 3 centuries. Now we have a seat on the council. Change was long overdue, Susan replied. And there's still much more to do. Back on Earth, humanity continued to develop its unique approach to space technology. The Nevada facility, once a secret underground base, had grown into a massive research complex spanning several square miles. Chief Engineer Megan Daniels now led the miniaturization division of Earth's Space Technology Agency. The new Mark 7 prototype exceeded all expectations, she told Dr. Paul Johnson as they walked through a testing chamber. We've reduced the size by another 30% while increasing power efficiency. Paul nodded approvingly. And the medical applications are proving even more valuable than the military ones. This was another surprise development. The miniaturization technology originally created for the swarm ships was now being adapted for medical use. Tiny robots could enter the human body to repair damage and fight disease from within, just as the smallest swarm ships had infiltrated enemy vessels. Captain Aaron Garcia, now General Garcia, had established a training academy for pilots of all species interested in learning swarm tactics. Many former protected worlds had sent their best pilots to train under him. Formation Delta, maintain your positions. Aaron instructed a group of trainees from 6 different species. Their tiny ships moved in perfect coordination through a complex obstacle course. Remember, in a swarm, you're only as effective as your teamwork. The innovative technology had spread across the galaxy, but not without challenges. Some conservative factions still resisted the changes, particularly among the Dravex. Supreme Commander Thorne, though officially retired, had become the leader of a movement called Traditional Order. They argued that the new equality threatened stability and ancient traditions. In a dimly lit room on a distant Dravex colony, Thorne met with his supporters. The humans and their allies grow stronger each day, he warned. They're spreading their dangerous ideas throughout the Confederation. What can we do? Asked a former Dravex captain. Their technology proved superior to ours twice already. Thorne's eyes narrowed. Not superior, just unexpected. But now we understand their methods and we've been developing countermeasures. Across the table, a scientist spread out diagrams showing new types of energy fields designed to disable the tiny ships. Our research suggests these disruption fields will render their swarm technology useless. Thorne smiled grimly. We'll need one final demonstration to restore the proper order. The humans must be put back in their place. Earth's intelligence network, now working closely with allies across the galaxy, detected these preparations. President Ellen Carter, serving her second term, called an emergency meeting with her top advisors and the newly formed Confederation Defense Council. Thorne is gathering forces, she informed the group. He appears to have support from conservative factions on at least 7 worlds. Ambassador Linda Porter, recently returned from the Confederation capital, nodded grimly. Many of the old guard are uncomfortable with how quickly power structures have changed. They see Earth as the catalyst for their loss of status. And they're not entirely wrong, Jack admitted. We did upend the established order. The question is, what do we do about this threat? Susan asked. Another conflict could destabilize everything we've built. Megan Daniels, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. Maybe we don't need to fight at all. Maybe we can show them something even more impressive than our military capabilities. All eyes turned to her as the Galactic Confederation Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from all member species packed the room, standing along the walls when seats ran out. At the center of attention was a human woman, Ambassador Linda Porter, recently appointed to represent Earth. The Council recognizes Ambassador Porter of Earth, announced the head counselor, a Vrel elder whose wrinkled skin showed great age. Linda stood confidently, though she was much smaller than most aliens. Present. Thank you for allowing me to address this emergency session, she began. I understand many of you have concerns about recent events. Concerns? Shouted a Dravex representative. Your species has violated dozens of Confederation laws. You developed unauthorized military technology while under protected status. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Many species were afraid of what the humans had done. If one protected species could challenge the powerful Dravex, what would stop others from trying the same? Linda remained calm. The technology we developed breaks no specific laws. The Confederation restricted us from building weapons above certain sizes and power levels. Our ships are well below those limits. This is clearly against the spirit of the agreement, the Dravex insisted. Perhaps, Linda replied. But is it against the spirit of the Confederation itself? I've studied your founding documents. The Confederation was created to promote peace and cooperation among all intelligent species, yet some members are treated as equals while others are kept as dependents for centuries, the Vrel elder spoke up. Ambassador Porter raises an interesting point. Perhaps it is time to reconsider how we classify member species. Many council members looked uncomfortable. The current system had worked well for the dominant species, keeping them in power while controlling access to resources and technology. What exactly does Earth want? Asked another counselor. Linda's answer was simple. Full membership status, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. The chamber erupted in debate. While the politicians argued, military leaders were having their own discussions elsewhere. Supreme Commander Thorn had been demoted after his defeat, but he still had influence among the Dravex military. The humans must be stopped before other protected species follow their example, he told a group of high-ranking officers. I've analyzed their strategy. Those tiny ships depend on coordination to be effective. If we disrupt their communications, they become vulnerable. One officer looked doubtful. Our best ships were defeated by their swarms. Because we were unprepared, Thorn insisted. Now we know what to expect. Back on Earth, preparations continued. In the Nevada facility, Megan Daniels was working with Dr. Paul Johnson on their most ambitious project yet. The Phase 3 prototypes are ready for testing, Megan announced to Admiral Miller and Colonel Wright during a secure briefing. She pressed a button, and a section of the wall slid open. Behind it was what looked like an empty shelf. I don't see anything, Jack said, confused. Megan smiled and handed him a special magnifying device. Look again. Through the device, Jack could now see dozens of tiny ships, each smaller than his fingernail. My God, he whispered. How did you make them so small? Quantum engineering, Paul explained. The smaller they are, the harder they are to detect or counter. These can fly through gaps in shielding that even our previous models couldn't penetrate. Susan looked impressed but concerned. What about pilots? No human could fly something that small. They're controlled by advanced AI, Megan explained. But they can also link with our larger swarm ships, essentially functioning as extensions of those vessels. While Earth prepared new defenses, trouble was brewing across the galaxy. Several protected species, inspired by humanity's stand, began demanding better treatment. On 3 different worlds, protests broke out against Confederation policies. The Dravex and their allies saw these developments as dangerous. During a closed session of the Council's Security Committee, they proposed a strong response. We must make an example of the humans, a Dravex general argued. Show the galaxy what happens to those who disrupt the established order. The vote was close, but in the end, the hardliners won. A new fleet was assembled, larger than the last. Over 50 capital ships, including the newest Dravex dreadnought, prepared to move against Earth. Earth's spy network detected these preparations. President Carter called an emergency meeting with her top advisors. They're coming with everything they have, she told the grim-faced group. The Confederation Council is split, but the military faction has taken control. How long do we have? Jack asked. 1 week, maybe less, Carter replied. They're gathering their fleet at Proxima Centauri, just 4 light years away. Everyone understood the gravity of the situation. This would not be like the previous encounter. The Confederation forces would be better prepared, with new countermeasures against the swarm tactics. We need to gain more allies, Susan suggested. Other protected species who might help us. I've been working on that, Carter said. Ambassador Porter has made contact with representatives from 12 other protected worlds. They're watching closely. If we succeed against this attack, they're prepared to declare their independence as well. Jack studied the tactical displays showing the approaching enemy fleet. We won't beat them the same way twice. They'll be ready for our previous tactics. Megan stepped forward. Then we show them something new. The Phase 3 ships are ready, and I've developed a new strategy I call Firefly Protocol. She explained her plan, and gradually the worried faces in the room began to show hope. 5 days later, the massive Confederation fleet entered the solar system. This time they moved more cautiously, with special sensor arrays designed to detect the tiny human ships. The fleet was led by a new commander, Admiral Zex, who had studied the previous battle carefully. Deploy the disruptor field, Zex ordered as his fleet passed Jupiter's orbit. That should interfere with their swarm coordination. Powerful jammers activated across the Confederation ships, broadcasting signals designed to block the communications between human vessels. All ships maintain tight formation, Zex continued, and keep point defense systems on continuous sweep. In the Earth orbit, Admiral Miller watched the approaching fleet on his command center screens. Beside him, Colonel Wright and Captain Garcia monitored their own displays. They're jamming our standard frequencies, Susan reported. Just as we expected. Jack nodded. Activate quantum network. Across the solar system, the swarm ships switched to a new communication system, one that used quantum entanglement instead of traditional signals. This technology, recently developed by Earth scientists, couldn't be jammed by conventional means. Swarms are maintaining coordination, Aaron confirmed. Ready to deploy on your order. Jack took a deep breath. Begin Operation Firefly. Thousands of tiny ships launched from their hidden bases. But instead of forming into attack groups, they spread out into a seemingly random pattern. The Confederation sensors detected them but couldn't determine any clear strategy. They're deploying their swarms, reported a Dravex sensor officer to Admiral Zex. But the pattern is different this time. Zex studied the displays with narrow eyes. They're adapting, but so have we. All ships, prepare to engage with wide-field weapons. Don't try to target individual ships. Saturate the areas where they concentrate. As the Confederation fleet prepared to fire, something strange happened. The human swarm ships began to emit pulses of light in complex patterns. To the Confederation sensors, it created a chaotic, flickering effect that made it difficult to track the tiny vessels. What are they doing? Zex demanded. His sensor officer looked confused. The light patterns are interfering with our targeting systems. It's like trying to aim at thousands of moving stars. On Earth, Megan Daniels monitored the Firefly Protocol with satisfaction. It's working, she told President Carter, who stood behind her. Their sensors can't distinguish our ships from the light patterns, but this was just the beginning. As the Confederation fleet struggled with the light display, the Phase 3 ships, the ones too small to see without special equipment, moved silently toward their targets. Admiral Zex grew frustrated as his weapons failed to hit the elusive human ships. This is absurd. How can we not hit them? His question was soon answered in the worst possible way. All across his fleet, ships began reporting system failures. Weapons went offline. Engines lost power. Communications became garbled. What's happening? Zex demanded. His chief engineer looked pale. Something is attacking our ships from the inside, but the internal sensors detect nothing. The Phase 3 ships, too small for the Confederation's security systems to detect, had infiltrated the enemy vessels through cooling vents and maintenance access points. Once inside, they began systematically disabling critical systems. In the lead Confederation ship, Admiral Zex watched helplessly as his mighty fleet was paralyzed by an enemy he couldn't even see. His screens showed the larger human swarm ships now moving in, no longer hiding their approach. "Sir," said his communications officer, "we're being hailed by Earth Command." Zex had no choice. "Put them through." Admiral Jack Miller's face appeared on the screen. Behind him stood Susan Wright, Aaron Garcia, and Megan Daniels. 5 years passed since Earth first met the Galactic Confederation. The planet now had regular visits from alien traders, but only for approved goods. Humans were not allowed to buy advanced weapons or ship technology. This was part of their protected status. Deep under the Nevada desert, Chief Engineer Megan Daniels wiped sweat from her forehead. She stood in a massive underground hangar, surrounded by hundreds of tiny spacecraft. Each one was about the size of a small car, but packed with technology. "How's the new swarm link working?" she asked Dr. Paul Johnson, who sat at a computer nearby. Paul looked up with tired but excited eyes. "Better than expected. The test group of 50 ships is now thinking and moving as one unit." Megan smiled. Project Swarm had grown beyond their wildest dreams. What started as an idea to build smaller, harder-to-detect ships had evolved into something amazing. Now they could link the tiny ships together with a special AI system. This let many small ships work together like one big ship, but with the advantage of being able to split apart when needed. "Admiral Miller wants a full report by tomorrow," Megan said. "The Dravex are getting bolder. On the surface, Earth acted like the perfect protected planet. Government officials always thank the Confederation for their guidance, but underground, in secret bases around the world, humans prepared for a different future." Captain Aaron Garcia entered the hangar, still wearing his flight suit. "Just finished the obstacle course with Squad 7. These ships can fly through spaces no Dravex vessel could ever fit through." Aaron was one of their best pilots. He trained others to fly the tiny ships, which required very different skills than flying traditional spacecraft. "Any word from Titan?" Megan asked. Aaron's face grew serious. "Nothing since yesterday. The mining colony went dark without sending any distress signals. Titan was Saturn's largest moon, where humans had built a small mining operation. The Confederation had approved it since they considered the outer planets unimportant. But lately, Dravex ships had been spotted near Saturn. "Admiral Miller thinks the Dravex are testing us," Paul said, "seeing how we react if they push into our territory." The three of them knew what was at stake. After 5 years of studying the Confederation, humans had learned some hard truths. Many protected species stayed that way forever, slowly losing their independence as the stronger races took more and more control. Megan's phone buzzed. It was a message from Susan Wright, now a colonel working directly with President Carter. The message was simple. "Green light. Swarm deploys tonight." "It's time," Megan told the others. "We're launching." 12 hours later, in a secure room beneath the White House, President Ellen Carter faced a screen showing Admiral Jack Miller on the bridge of a ship called Defender. This was one of Earth's official ships, large enough for the Confederation to see and track. "The Dravex flagship Annihilator has reached Saturn's orbit," Jack reported. "They're claiming they detected illegal technology on Titan and are moving to investigate." "And our people?" Carter asked. "No contact. We fear they've already been taken or worse." Carter nodded grimly. "You have my authorization. Show them what humans can really do." Jack turned to his crew. "Launch the swarm." Far away near Titan, small hatches opened in the moon's rocky surface. To any watching aliens, it might have looked like nothing at all was happening. The ships that emerged were so small that most alien sensors would barely notice them. One by one, hundreds of tiny ships flew out from hidden bases. They formed groups of 50, each group linking their systems together. Captain Aaron Garcia led the first group, his voice calm as he gave orders. "Swarm 1, maintain stealth approach. Swarm 2 and 3, circle wide and wait for my signal." The Dravex flagship Annihilator was enormous, nearly a mile long. It had already sent shuttles down to Titan's surface. They were loading equipment and materials from the human mining colony. On the Annihilator's bridge, Admiral Vorex watched with bored eyes. "These humans are so weak. They build a mining operation, but don't even defend it properly." His sensor officer suddenly leaned forward. "Sir, I'm detecting some small objects moving from Titan's surface." "Debris? Escape pods?" Vorex asked without much interest. "No, sir. They appear to be very small ships, hundreds of them." Vorex laughed. "Ships? Those can't be ships. They're too small to be anything useful." On his screen, tiny dots moved toward the Annihilator. They were so small that the ship's automatic defense systems didn't even register them as threats. "Ignore those toys," Vorex said. "Continue loading the human resources. Their government will complain through official channels, and the Confederation will issue us a small fine at worst. Captain Aaron Garcia's voice reached all the swarm pilots. Begin Phase 1. The tiny ships suddenly accelerated, moving far faster than their size suggested possible. They split into precise formations, each group heading for a specific part of the massive Dravex ship. Lieutenant Kelly Walsh led the first strike team. Her group of ships approached the Annihilator's engines. "I see the cooling vents," she reported. "Just as our scans showed, they're big enough for us to fly through." Inside the Dravex ship, an alarm finally sounded. "Sir," the sensor officer shouted. "The small objects are attaching themselves to our hull." Vorex stood up, annoyed rather than concerned. "Activate point defense systems." "They're trying, sir, but the targets are too small and too fast. Our weapons are designed to hit ships at least 50 times their size." For the first time, Vorex felt a twinge of worry. What exactly are they doing? On the hull of the Annihilator, the tiny human ships were finding every weak point. Some entered through maintenance hatches. Others slipped through shield gaps that would be too small for any normal ship to use. Kelly's team flew directly into the engine cooling system. Inside were massive turbines and heat exchangers that kept the giant ship from overheating. "Deploy microcharges," Kelly ordered. Her ships released small devices that attached to critical engine components. All across the Annihilator, human ships were doing similar work. Some cut power lines, others disabled weapon systems. Many released tiny drones that entered the ships. Air vents. On the bridge, Vorex was now receiving reports from all over his ship. "Engines at 70% and falling. Weapons control not responding. Security systems offline." Vorex stared at his screen in disbelief. The tiny dots were swarming his mighty ship like insects. But these were no insects. They were human-built, spacecraft operating with perfect coordination. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "No species builds ships this small." His communications officer looked up in fear. "Sir, we're being hailed by the human ships." Vorex growled. "Put them on screen." Admiral Jack Miller's face appeared. Behind him stood Captain Aaron Garcia and Lieutenant Kelly Walsh, who had returned from her mission. "Admiral Vorex," Jack said calmly, "you are currently trespassing in Earth's territory and stealing our resources." "This is outrageous," Vorex shouted. "Your pathetic ships couldn't possibly. Your engines will fail completely in 3 minutes." Jack interrupted. "Your weapons are already disabled, and those pathetic ships you dismissed, they just defeated your flagship without firing a single traditional shot." Vorex looked around his bridge. His crew was panicking as system after system went offline. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "You will return everything you took from our Titan colony. You will leave our solar system immediately. And you will tell the Confederation that humans are not as defenseless as they thought." Vorex wanted to refuse, but his ship was now completely at the mercy of the humans and their impossible tiny ships. "The Confederation will hear of this," he threatened. Jack smiled slightly. "I hope they do. I hope they hear how their mighty Dravex flagship was defeated by what you called our tiny Armada." As Vorex grudgingly ordered his crews to return the stolen goods, he looked again at the screen showing the swarm of tiny ships surrounding his vessel. He had never imagined that something so small could be so dangerous. Humans, it seemed, had just changed the rules of space warfare.